and welcome to the fabulous NAFEM Show here in sunny Orlando, Florida. My name is Michael Jones, Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. We're filming this special episode here at NAFEM, supported by Frymaster and Welbilt. Big thanks to them. And we are focusing today on predicting the changing world of back-of-house needs to improve operational performance, food quality and sustainability. I'm delighted to be joined by two leading FCSI the Americas consultants, professional members, and the Director of New Product Development at Frymaster. So firstly, let me ask each participant to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their organisations and their area of expertise. Laura, let's start with you first, please.
Sure, I'm Laura Lentz. I'm with Culinary Advisors. I'm a design principal and owner in the firm. We're located out of the Maryland area, kind of DC, Metro Maryland focuses. We practice in all work segments, so we kind of focus specifically, however, in government work, healthcare, and workplace.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laura. And Joe.
Thanks, Michael. I'm Joe Schumaker. My company is FoodSpace. We are based in Silicon Valley, and I am based in Eagle, Idaho, and I am the founder and CEO. I also serve the Americas Board of Directors as the treasurer currently, and I am also on the worldwide committee for technology. So,
fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Thank
and
you.
Wendell.
Yeah, my name is Wendell Hayes. I'm the Director of New Product Development at Frymaster. And, Frymaster is the world's largest manufacturer of commercial fryers in the food service space. And really what we focus on is just trying to make frying easier for our customers.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wendell. So before we get to some of the solutions about how to improve back-of-house operations, let's focus on some of the primary challenges that your clients, operators, are facing at the moment. What are some of the biggest obstacles they're experiencing? Things like labour issues, inflation, soaring food costs, that kind of thing. Laura, let's start with you first, please.
I mean, I think we've honestly been kind of turned on our heads in a very short period of time and been hit in both directions, primarily labor, but also just the pandemic itself, which kind of caused a whole number of rifts. So I think it's been a combination. I think we're all trying to navigate and figure out what the new world is exactly. But it's kind of cool that I think now where we're at is figuring out and seeing what really works and what doesn't work, and sort of at that point where fads are starting to really fade, and we're getting into a new way, what is successful, what is working, and starting to really get a lot of good information from clients and manufacturers as well. So
great stuff. Thank you, Laura. Joe, same question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great answer. I mean, I think the other way I look at it is there's almost like two parts to this question, right? Because there's different sectors have slightly different challenges,
sure.
Right? Like I do a lot of corporate dining, and corporate dining, the challenge is how many bodies are going to be in the building each day. That's an enormous challenge. It's creating food waste. It's we already have a labor shortage, but then certain days you have to be staffed to a certain level, and other days, and then how do you retain people without full-time work? And so, some of those challenges in certain sectors are almost different than they were before the pandemic, because at least the labor shortage was a consistency thing, right? Yeah. Restaurants and other sectors are facing the same problems, because do your guests want takeout or delivery, or do they want to come and have an experience? And so it's what's interesting is, though, some of these challenges are the same challenges we were facing before the pandemic. Right. They're just reorganized into some different priorities.
Or you're seeing them through a slightly different lens. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, consistency and variety will always clash. Yeah. Finding the balance between those two, and I think what the pandemic did was reorganize how and when people are thinking about those things.
Sure. Yeah, so thank you, Jay. Wendell, some
Yeah,
questions?
so I think the other challenges I would add, I think first and foremost, the biggest one that I hear, and we heard it just this past week at the FCSI symposium that we did, right? Almost every speaker talked about the challenge of training the crews, training the people that are using the equipment, right? So training is a really big one that I hear a lot. And another one I think is common now is food costs. In a lot of sectors, the food costs have gone up, and particularly for us in the frying industry, the cost of oil has actually doubled in the last 2 years, right? And so everybody's looking for ways to get more life out of that oil and be able to do things to help with that.
This is a very, it's always been a very resilient, robust sector, food service. It's always found a way. It's a very adaptable sector. Change, we're often told in all sectors, is good. Change is healthy, but how much change it can be a bad thing? How much resilient can the sector be to keep evolving, Wendell? Same question to you on that one.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about change is, right, change is inevitable. You're always going to have change. But what happens is, how do you manage it, right? Yeah. And what are your goals for change? If we can always make sure that the change that we're embracing is going to make things easier for the people that are working with the equipment, then we're always going to win, right? So it's all about the goal of what that change is going to bring.
Do you agree with that, Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only other thought I have on it is that change is the only constant, and it has been. And I think, how do you can't classify that change is different today. What changed was the pandemic hit. Now everybody's trying to figure out, well, what's different? Well, rewind 20 years ago, there was something else that was still causing the need for change. Also, technology is evolving so fast that technology doesn't necessarily drive the change. It's meant to improve some problem. So that change is going to be a constant thing. There's always going to be the race for what's next. And so regardless, pandemic or not, that's happening. And so at some point, we just need to embrace the fact that change is the only constant.
Sure. Do you agree with that, Laura?
I do. What had been interesting for me as a consultant was when you go to conferences and you're talking to people and clients and such, and you're hearing, for a while it seemed like we didn't exactly know what the problem was, or we hadn't yet identified what, like you said, where you needed to go. And I do think now I have a better sense that we all know where we need to go. I mean, to what you said earlier, Joe, I also totally agree that it's definitely been different solutions for different markets, and the problems that they're trying to correct, I think, are different and more different than they were before. There was a lot more kind of similar issues before, where now I think a lot of these market segments have grown apart. But it does feel a little more assured that we kind of know what the problem is that we're trying to solve now. And it might be a whole, different recipe for different folks.
And like Joe was saying with the technology piece of it, right? I mean, technology is intended to be a good thing, right? But if you don't have a goal for the technology, then sometimes you just embrace the technology, embracing change for the sake of having it. But you got to have that goal for the technology. If you're going to do something with technology, how do you use that to really make a difference in the kitchen, right? How do you make things easier, make things better with that technology?
That's a great point. I love that aspect you were bringing there, Laura, that the pandemic, if anything, if there's one upside to it, it did bring that focus. It brought everyone's attention to some of the issues that perhaps we hadn't addressed particularly well before it hit. Let's start focusing on some of the solutions then. So Joe, what are some of the smart initiatives that your clients have put into place that have helped them to address some of the challenges we just discussed?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously robotics and automation and connected kitchen, right? These are the buzzwords. The problem is, the reality is, that's not being put into sites today. And so I think what it is, it's about being smart with your menu. It's about being smart with how you're documenting and publishing your menu. Are you using the embedded technologies that are in the equipment you're buying? One of the things that we've been working on is going all the way back to the thought process of why do we specify that piece of equipment in the first place, right? Name your XYZ combi oven. Downstream, are we writing menus that actually use the power of that combi oven, or are we just using it like a convection oven? And I think those are some of the things that just, I think we're, and especially as consultants, I think we're in the habit of, all right, next project, all right, next project, all right, next project. And so, in my practice, we've actually been working on trying to figure out how to give support way downstream and help them actually then go back and use this equipment. The other problem is we know turnover is a problem. And so now somebody got trained on XYZ piece of equipment, and then there's turnover, and now the new person doesn't know anything about it, and they've only worked in kitchens that had, a regular fryer, a regular stove, a regular oven, and now they get in there and there's all these buttons and fancy screens, and nobody trained them how to use it. And so sometimes technology is always great. Sometimes technology is bad when it's not being used. And I think that's something that sometimes it's really easy to just get on to, all right, what's next, without we haven't fully implemented what's here now.
It's the application.
That's right.
Laura, a similar question to you. Is there any specific innovation or any particular new way of thinking, any new process that fundamentally changed how you and your team work on projects?
Yeah, I mean, so the two big things that come to my mind when you ask that question that we've been working through is, and we're here at Frymaster, right? So I'll use that as an example. When it comes to specifying a fryer, is this a client who just needs a filtration system in the fryer itself? Is this a client who is going to go through enough oil that we're going to do a reclamation system so that we can really extend the life, kind of to what Wendell was saying earlier? And then, is this one for automated lift baskets? Is this one for a freezer dispenser? Like, kind of things that we would not have normally been as automatic as they were before. It's definitely changed how I'm thinking about design for making sure that whatever the right solution is. And I guess for me, it's spending time figuring out more what is that right solution for that client that I didn't necessarily have to do before. So I think that's definitely been more on the mind. And, one of the things I think operators are trying to figure out is everybody knows you have a labor shortage, right? But how much is that shortage? Like I have a client right now where they're right bare bones right now, but do we actually design for that? Or is this labor shortage going to even itself out? Are they going to get more, kind of back to a normal level? And then the other piece of it that definitely comes up for me is the training aspect of it and demonstrations, and kind of to solve, if a manufacturer has, emphasized to me that they're strong with the demonstrations and the retraining and the connections, even extending to like our rep groups where there's a strong relationship to be able to say, hey, I need you to go back out because these guys have a whole new staff and nobody knows how to work the fryer. So those are more valuable maybe now than they would have been, and I'm paying more attention to those types of offerings from manufacturers in particular.
Brilliant. Let's get the manufacturer's view, Wendell. What sort of particular technologies have you seen have the most impact on clients to help alleviate some of those challenges in the back of house?
Yeah, I mean, there's really two of them. The first one is the touchscreen, right? The touchscreens are relatively new to the industry. We've been doing them for about 7 years now. Touchscreens aren't magical by themselves, but what touchscreens can do, if you build the features into it, is make it easier for people to use the equipment, right? The fryer needs to be smart enough to know that these crews aren't well trained, right? So the fryer's going to do it for them. When it's time to filter the oil, the fryer's going to tell you it's time to filter. When it's time to throw the oil out because it's old and it's used, it's going to tell you your oil's bad, you need to throw it out. I know this stuff because I was a 17-year-old kid, right? I got my 5 minutes of training on how to use a fryer. And one day my manager walked up to me and he's looking at the oil and it looks terrible. He's like, what are you doing? Why had you changed the oil? I was like, I didn't know I had to change the oil. Nobody told me, right? And so I always think about that when we're designing our products. It's like, how do we use the technology to help people know what they're supposed to do so that the fryer does the training for them? And then the other piece of that is the connectivity, right? I mean, we talk about having connected equipment. Again, just like any piece of technology, you don't get value out of just connecting it. You got to do something with it once it's connected. And you're really what it does with connectivity. One of the biggest things it does for manufacturers, it gives us a lot more insight into how people are using our equipment. We never had that before, right? We knew how we designed it to be used. And to your point, we trained people to use it, but what are they actually doing with it? Now we can watch it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can see, months after the install, how people are actually using it. And then we find problems, right? We find that, we're asking them to filter and they're not doing it, right? And it's like, okay, well, why is that? Turns out, a lot of times it's because we did it wrong. The way we did our controllers, we went back and redesigned it. We asked them a better way, and we were able to improve the number of times that they would actually do the filter because we got smarter at how we designed the equipment.
Sure.
But it all started with that connectivity and being able to see what was really going on in the real world.
And I guess just getting closer and closer to the operators themselves and getting that kind of feedback, it ultimately helps the products improve, right? Understanding their needs and their challenges.
Right. From a development standpoint, it helps us design the product and design the features that make it easier for the customers. The other end of it that I don't want to miss is the service aspect of it, right? I mean, a big challenge that we have from a service standpoint in all equipment is there's usually 2 service calls anytime there's a problem. 1, go figure out what's wrong, and then 2, go get the parts and come back and fix it, right? If we can do that diagnostics remotely, we can eliminate one of those service calls, which means that we're going to get the equipment back operational faster for the end user. It's going to cost us less money because we'll have to pay for 1 service call, not 2.
Joe, hearing Wendell talk about that kind of implementation, how do you see an upside or an advantage to an operator client? How will they benefit from something like remote monitoring?
No, and I think that's really exactly, and we talk about connected kitchens a lot, right? That's what we're talking about. The challenge that I see from an operations standpoint is maybe it's outside of even the warranty period too, because now I've got all these different pieces of equipment that have different service agents. They have different levels of the ability to diagnose themselves. And then also, are the techs actually trained? Are they actually doing that remote diagnosis, right? And so for me, one of the things that I would love to see, and I know this has been talked about, and with all due respect, I'm not going to spec a kitchen that's all one brand, right? That's just not going to happen. And so how do we get to a place where there's a combination of all that data that's out there about service calls, about fryer oil life, right? Whatever it is, how do we get that into one system so that an operator has a one-line view of what's going on? Right. I should be able to walk into my operation and see that Sally called in sick, that my fryer oil needs to get changed and Johnny didn't do that yesterday. I've got a combi oven that needs its filter changed, and I've got XYZ piece of equipment that needs service. And oh, by the way, they're coming to clean the hoods tomorrow. I should be able to open up one app and see all of that in one shot. That is a true connected kitchen. And the reality is this. Everybody's got their own IP. Everybody has their own brand identity. Until we have an outside source come in and just get all that data, we're not going to have that. Now, what the individual manufacturers are doing right now to help with that maintenance issue, that service issue, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Because
what's happening is we're collecting the data, right? Now we need the manufacturers to step up and say, all right, I'm willing to share that data, because that data is not really my IP. It's not really proprietary.
Right.
That's the data that makes the machine function, be fixed, tell us information about how our staff is using it. That information is not your IP, right? It's that information, the information that the operators need to be an efficient operator. And so I feel like we're sort of in the precipice of phase one happening, where we're speccing equipment that's capable of individually doing all these things. My question is, how quickly do we get to that next phase where now that's all being culminated into one operational tool? Ask me pre-pandemic, I would have said we're less than 5 years away from that. Today, I actually feel like maybe we've taken a little bit of a step back, because everybody had to kind of tighten up and
hunker down. Right?
Yeah, and I feel like right now is the time to push the gas pedal on getting to phase two.
So thank you, Jay. Laura, how do you see automation continuing to provide that sort of missing link to that decline in the frontline workforce in the back of house that we've been speaking about? How does it plug that gap?
Well, yeah, I mean, I am definitely seeing that there'll be, I want to say, small forms of automation, like the control panels, where I can kind of self-diagnose, and we're starting to see that service calls can be reduced or eliminated completely. So I recognize that's not necessarily automation, but I think that will be the first part of and I see a number of manufacturers who are really actively working towards it, like you had said, Wendell. I think that after that, kitchen systems for the back of the house that are able to really help and synthesize ordering and control and recipes, and to get at, I think Joe said it earlier, the consistency piece of it. And if you don't have the same people because you've got major turnover, how do we get the equipment? This is what you had said, right? So I think that will be what we're going to focus on in the immediate future. And I do think there will be a place. We have a lot of clients now who are looking for, and you're probably a couple years ahead of us just for location and such, with centralizing their kitchens, going to more kind of commissary style. So even some of the restaurant groups who are multi-unit, but not necessarily the 400 and 500 unit chains, that are looking towards being able to kind of synthesize and build on that central production piece of it. And that's where I think we'll start to be able to see robots and more kind of true AI type of AI automation coming out in the future. That's my thinking on it right now. Who knows what I'll say at the end of the year.
Well, Wendell, what do you think, to Laura's point there? Do you think the rate of robotics and automation going into kitchens is going to increase exponentially? Will it be more gradual? What do you think that rate of
I think the important thing is that we think about automation in the right way, right? I mean, a lot of people, when they think about automation for a fryer, for example, they want a fryer that's going to go get the food out of the freezer and cook it and then serve it to the customer, right? And I mean, one day, that
would
may
be
happen.
Great, by the way. That would be great if you could work on that.
But you may not want to spend that much money, right? I mean,
Right.
We've had a lot of people look at how much automation can you do, and then it's like, well, I'm not going to pay $5,000 a month for this kind of automation, right? I'd rather pay employees to do it, right? So there's a give and take there about how much automation you do, but there's lots of forms of innovation in automation that we do in the fryers. We automated the filtration process so that's something you just push a button and the fryer does that for you. We automated the top off process. When you're cooking, every time you take food out, you're taking some oil out, you got to eventually top it back off. Well, the fryer does that. We have a jib of oil that sits there with a hose in it, and it'll just pump some oil back into it gradually and keep it full. We also automate cognitive things that people have to think about, right? I mean, you've got all this equipment that you're dealing with in a kitchen, and the less you can take, the more you can take off the employee, the less they have to think about, then it gives them focus on the things they really need to do, right? So I don't want them thinking about when to filter the fryer. I want the fryer to tell them when it's time to filter. I don't want them to have to think about is oil good or bad. I want the provider to tell them that stuff. Those little pieces of cognitive automation just make it easier for them to use my equipment and easier for them to do all the other things they have to do in the restaurant. And I think those kind of automation is really important in the industry.
I think that's so important too, because I think, sorry to
No,
interrupt,
go.
but I think we're going to have more operators who are really in need of people doing multiple things. Again, maybe that's short term, maybe that's longer term, but personally, I think once we start to do it, it's going to stick around. It'll become a habit and we won't go back. So I think enabling that person who needs to be able to run the fryer and run the grill and such at the same time, in any way that equipment can do that, I think it's going to be successful.
Yeah, and like one of the easy things, right, that's real common, really readily available, it's really cheap, really, is basket lifts, right? Because they can start the cook and then they go do something else, another piece of equipment, and when that cook's done, it's going to bring itself up out of the oil, so you're not overcooking the food because you're trying to multitask and do other things.
Joe, we've heard we've heard incessantly for the last couple of years how restaurant operators or operators in any food service sector are beset by a myriad of challenges in terms of what they need to focus on, particularly the labour issue. Where should they focus their attentions at the moment? Is it investing in new equipment like this? Is it keeping people? Is it improving efficiencies? What do they focus on? Or is it a balance of all of the above?
I think it depends on where you're at in your business life cycle and or who your customer is. Again, this is a multi-sector conversation because in some sectors the answer is yes to all of the above. Yeah. In some sectors there's very specific things, and even what you guys were just talking about, in some sectors, if you're in the fast food business, maybe that $5,000 isn't prohibitive because I'm doing enough volume that it easily justifies it. And it's not about having just more bodies, it's about the efficiency of the bodies in that moment. In fine dining, there's a lot of chefs that probably think being able to lift the fry basket out of the fryer automatically is a bad thing. Right. So I think at some point, I think we have to break that question down just a little bit. So as you know, a lot of my experience is corporate dining.
Sure.
In the corporate dining environment, I think what it is about finding an operator that really cares about the success of the dining program and using it as a true amenity. And so when you break that down, what that means is we have to have skilled chefs. And we also have to have very friendly front of house people that are building relationships. In fact, in a lot of cases, the people that work for the operator almost work more for the company that they're working for than they do for the operator. And so people matter a lot. So what can we do for the people to keep them happy, to make sure that they're enjoying their job? And then on the culinary side, giving them the creativity, right? So, it's like the conversation about induction. Use of induction is a learned art. A chef's not going to just run out and say, "Hey, give me induction," when they're used to, burning on gas or using a French top, right? So we have to educate them so that then they can bring the technology and find value in it and then implement it to improve, grow their menu breadth, right? We joke about in corporate dining, we're feeding the same people 250 days a year. It's a people business, not a food business. Yeah. And so when you start to think about that, restaurants are very similar. It's a people business. It is not a food business. And so I feel like sometimes we just lose that. But when we're trying to implement technologies, we have to remember that those people, they got to embrace it. They have to be trained on it. They have to understand it. In fact, maybe they have to be part of the decision to implement it. And I think sometimes owners make those decisions for them, and then it's a resistance, right? I personally believe that a lot of the technology resistance is due to a lack of ineffective communication, ineffective training, and just a poor value prop a lot of times from the owner. And I think our job as consultants is to educate everybody. Tell the owner, hey, you need to work with your staff. Let's get your staff into the room and have a conversation about this. Before you guys go spend the money on this quote-unquote automation. I think that's a step that sometimes gets missed.
Yes.
And so then people are naturally, as we talked about early on in this session, change sucks, right? Like we hate change. So let's be part of the change together. And I think if we do that, and remember this is a people business sometimes first, automation will naturally become part of every kitchen ever built.
Absolutely. Laura, Joe's point now, this is a people business. Love that phrase about how do we get people to care about the success of a dining program. What do you think are the most significant factors in making a food service operation efficient and then getting people to care about making those efficiencies actually count for the end result for the customers?
Well, I think it's a good point that it is about, I mean, when it comes to efficiency, it is to the point of it's a people business. I think it really is about actually helping people be more efficient. And what I mean by that is you can throw lots of bells and whistles and accessories at something, but that need for really thinking through the specific process, the specific menu, and using fries as an example, thick cut, frozen, not frozen, fresh, what's the product? We kind of, I mean, for me, it's like I want to know more information in order to be able to help everyone be more efficient. That's a little challenging in the work that we do because sometimes we don't know who the operator is. We don't know who we're building for half the time. So it can be kind of a challenge. I will look forward to, in terms of efficiency, being able to see some of the things that are working that hopefully start to be working across the board. And it can be like, okay, I know this is a good solution regardless of maybe the unknowns of a particular design and a project. I think there's also things that are more important than they were before, like, aisle spaces and pivots and what kind of, that really all relates back to volume, how many people you're doing, how many people are going to be staffed at a station. If I'm designing a station that's staffed with one person versus 3 people, there's a whole different spacing and ergonomics that goes along with that type of thinking.
So a final question from me then. Let's look ahead. Is the future still bright for food service, and how are back-of-house operations going to carry the burden of some of the challenges we've been discussing? Wendell, your views, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think mainly it goes back to what we've been talking about, right? How do we use the technology that's available, and then how do we use that to address the specific challenges, right? From a food user standpoint, how do we help extend the life of the oil by using the technology? When we talk about the training issue, how do we use the technology that we have and the controller and connectivity to help train crews and be able to use it better and faster?
Fantastic. Thank you, Wendell. Joe?
I don't know. Sometimes I go back to talk is a little bit cheap, right? I mean, not to, put a spin on. I want to see progress, right?
Yep.
And the way we get to progress is by actually starting to implement some of these things that we've been talking about. The pandemic put a huge pause on that. Now we're back. I think we're busier than ever. We're growing still. We are looking at what segments we should be in because, obviously some of those challenges. But at the end of the day, technology is going to continue to evolve. The question is, how do we embrace it? And how quickly can we implement things that actually matter as opposed to just talking about it?
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Laura, same question.
This might be a bit of a shameless plug, but I think that back-of-house design is going to be more critical than it ever was before. Mm-hmm. So I think that building for and designing for efficiency, using and really thinking about everything that's in a space and where it needs to be to minimize steps, to work through labor, bring in automation where it's appropriate and where it makes sense, and spend your money as wisely as possible. I think that's going to be really critical. I think that there won't be an opportunity for the cookie cutter, the copy and paste kind of thing to be anywhere near as successful as maybe it might have been able to get by in the past.
Thank you, Laura. That was a great debate with an outstanding panel. Wendell, Joe, Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to thank Frymaster and Welbilt for their support for this panel session. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to FCSI.org for future events. Thank you.